Hi everyone, welcome to this Q&A. So I've got three fantastic questions for us today. The first is, how do I improve my arms in cowface? So cowface, if you're not too sure, is where we're in this position here. We're trying to get our fingers to interlink together. We're pushing our head lightly back into the top arm and the bottom arm is pressing in towards the lower back. It's a really hard position to get our shoulders into because it's not an everyday movement that we would normally do. So my tips on this is, first of all, you could use a yoga strap. So you would have your strap in your top hand and then you would clasp it with the bottom hand, and it's a really good way of just opening up through the shoulders and developing your mobility and your flexibility really in this pose. However, another way to think about it is to prepare the body. So we could do preparation with movement. So we could do some shoulder rolls would be a great one. Interlinking the hands behind your chest, squeezing the shoulder blades together, opening up through the chest muscles, through the shoulders is another great one. Maybe taking prayer hands behind your back. Also things like puppy pose, where we're getting a really nice opening, shoulder flexion, and also stretching through the chest muscles. But also, let's think about preparing the body in terms of what we're doing when we're getting into the pose. What exactly are our arms and our shoulders expected to do to give us the greatest chance of getting into that stretch? So let's look at this idea of internal rotation and external rotation. So let's take the top arm first of all. When the top arm is upwards, we're in external rotation, okay? And we're in shoulder flexion. So if you think about understanding what external and internal is, if you take your hand out towards the side and then turn your thumb down, this is our internal rotation. If we turn the thumb up and away, we're externally rotating the arm. So for the top arm, we want to think external, so turn out. Then you can bend the elbow and then maybe take your other hand and place it on top of the elbow to help encourage your shoulder to sort of open up. Remember, we're in flexion here, so we want to press it lightly back into or the head lightly back into the arm, keeping the neck in line, and this is a great place to start to develop the stretch. You also get a really nice stretch for the tricep too. So now let's think about the bottom arm. So if we're working that, isolating it on its own, we're thinking about the bottom arm being in internal rotation and the shoulder is in shoulder extension because the arm is coming back behind us. So turn the arm and prep it. Start to turn it into internal rotation, then take it round your back. And then you could maybe take your other hand to help support that elbow and press it lightly in towards the lower back. This is a really great setup, and you'll probably find you have a lot more reach and room to eventually try and clasp both those fingers together and find that stretch. Let me know how you get on, and I really hope you find it helpful. So we're thinking again about mindfully moving into the position rather than just trying to clasp the hands together. Okay, our second question then. This is one for all those really who are practicing headstand, and I had a couple of people ask me, when they're practicing headstand at home, why are they experiencing maybe a little bit of sensational pain in their neck? So this is something obviously we want to avoid completely when we're practicing headstand. The idea with headstand is that you're not taking your body weight totally into your head, okay? So it really worries me when I see people practice postures where their arms are sort of out towards the side, or they've got no support with their arms whatsoever, and their head is literally taking all that weight. Because if you imagine how heavy your body is, and your poor little neck is trying to support that, is not a great place to be. So my first thoughts on this is really, if you are experiencing neck pain and you're worried about it, or you have any neck or spinal issues, then I would avoid it. I would practice your forearm stand, where your head is lifted and you're able to support your body weight through your forearms and you're in a really safe space. If, however, you want to continue with your headstand practice, the first thing to think about is your head positioned correctly on the mat? Notoriously, people start their headstand practice and they're actually balancing on the wrong part of their head. So you want to be practicing on the flat part. So if you were going to put a book on your head, it would be balanced there. And the great way to find this is to take your palm, place the crease where your wrist meets, just between your eyebrows, and then place your hand on your head, and where your middle finger meets is pretty much that spot where you want to position your head on the mat. The next thing to think about is, are you developing enough strength through the structure in your arms to take your body weight? And this is where I think, for me, it's great to spend the time really developing that strength before you start to even take yourself into maybe a half headstand or a headstand itself. So do practice with things like, for example, dolphin pose is a great way to build that strength. You can come into supported headstand where your fingers are interlinked and your hands are on the back of your head. And this essentially is the frame that's able to take the weight. So we're pressing our elbows and our wrists and our hands, or really the whole forearm of that structure, very, very actively into the mat. You've got to drive those arms down, okay? And you could then come from that with maybe onto your feet, so you're in that headstand structure and you've got your toes down, and then you can start to sort of lengthen the legs, maybe taking one leg up, so like a three-legged sort of variation of headstand will be a great place to practice too. But again, actively pressing the arms down into the floor is super important, okay? Of course, building strength in the upper body with things like plank, side plank, anything where you're developing sort of shoulder strength is going to really help you out too. The last thing I guess to think about also is maybe to consider what type of headstand you're doing. So there tends to be two variations we can practice, or two common variations we can practice. One being a tripod headstand and one being the supported headstand that I just mentioned, where you're interlinked with the fingers and this is against the crown of the head. So tripod is where your hands are down and your head is down. So if you think about a triangle, the head being the point and your two hands being the bottom points of that triangle. And essentially you're pressing the hands down as well as you're balancing on your head to get into that headstand. And it tends to be probably the one that most beginners practice first. However, my thoughts on this are, when I've been practicing it myself, is it's very hard to support your body weight in that tripod headstand because you've got to actively press into the hands and they feel like they're quite far away from your head. So if you think about the other structure where we've got the forearms sort of actively pressing down, for me that's a much more safer place to be because you've got that added support, whereas with tripod there is a tendency to load onto the head. And possibly if you're practicing that variation, that might be why you're experiencing that pain in the neck. So I would recommend, again, try the supported variation over the tripod and see how you get on. But if, of course, you're still experiencing that neck pain, it might be a case of taking or practicing forearm stand instead. I hope that helps. The third question then is, what yoga poses do you recommend to help me sleep? Okay, sleep is one of my favourite things to do. I have to get at least 7 to 8 hours to even kind of get through the day, let's say. So I do use a lot of yoga and meditation techniques to help with sleep. But for me, the best poses are anything where you can relax into them. So generally anything where you're reclined on your back would be a great place to start, and a pose where you can get comfortable and breathe deeply. So we don't want to be doing anything too strenuous, getting the heart rate up too much before we're about to go to bed. So things like, for example, legs up the wall. You have your legs up the wall and you're lying on your back. A great place to be. You could do a restorative bridge. So you come into bridge pose where you place some support underneath you, where you're resting into the pose rather than lifting up. Reclined bound angle is a lovely one for the hips. So the soles of the feet are together, you're on your back, and then the knees out towards the side. Knees to chest, and then some like circling of the knees is lovely for your lower back. Happy baby pose, child's pose. Some spinal twists are really nice as well, especially if you suffer from sort of low back and niggles. So anything like that's going to really, really help you. Anything where you can breathe, as I said, nice and deeply. But also consider breath work and meditation. So even a 3 to 5 minute sort of meditation prior to going to sleep, maybe literally as you're about to go to sleep, you know, you could use an app or even just some guided sort of breath work, even just taking the body, maybe if you're thinking about breathing, we could go and an inhale to the count of 4 and then an exhale to the count of sort of 4 to 6 is a really nice place to start if you're sort of working with your breath. But meditation is a great way to just calm the mind, because sometimes our body can feel physically tired, but the mind is still like going, is really, really active. So yeah, try meditation. If the sort of physical yoga poses aren't helping, then maybe doing something to sort of relax the mind will help you too. Again, I hope that really helps. If you have any other questions, let me know. Thank you for joining me. Please send any other questions you have in the meantime. It's always helpful to hear from you and to help develop your yoga practice. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you again soon.